Today, I want to welcome Dan Mott. I learned about Dan through a buddy of mine named Matt, and I kept hearing about Dan and about how much he impacted the way people act on LinkedIn, how Dan influenced them that changed their bottom line, drove more revenue because of what they learned about from Dan on LinkedIn. And so Dan, obviously, we're going to talk about LinkedIn, but he's a social selling coach for solopreneurs. He's the creator of the Manifest a Million Challenge and co-founder of marketingops.com. And here's something that's really interesting. He runs a D&D networking group for nerdy entrepreneurs. So it sounds like social is just like in everything Dan does. And so I'm looking forward to this talk. You should listen in because you know what? One of the things I've seen, Dan and I talked about, is like when people talked about LinkedIn, it's kind of like teenagers talking about sex. Everybody says they're doing it. They're not doing it as much as they are, as they think, as they say they are. And nobody's really that good at it. And Dan is good at it. And so listen in because you're going to walk away with some actionable things that are going to make a difference to your LinkedIn strategy. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Craig. It's great to be here.
So I got to start with the D&D. I've never gotten D&D. I just, I see you guys floating around. I know you guys are passionate about it. I don't understand it. It's not my thing. What are you doing? What's this networking group? And tell me what happens there.
Yep. Okay, so this is gonna be the rest of the episode. Everything else is out the door. You start getting me talking about D&D, I can't stop. Yeah, I mean it's been around since the 60s, 70s. We are on the 5th edition of the game, and actually Wizards of the Coast is looking to make the next iteration of it, but it's tabletop gaming. It's it's a way to play with the theater of the mind. It's sharpened my creative skills so much over the past 3 years. It's incredible.
Hey,
Even just like
let me pause a quick because there's somebody sitting there listening. There's like, I still don't know what D&D is. What is D&D?
That's actually probably going to be the hardest question on this.
What's it stand for?
Yeah. So D&D stands for Dungeons and Dragons. You'll see it kind of like throughout pop culture. I think what was it? Stranger Things did a really good job of kind of like bringing it back, and it's very much kind of on the rise again now. But it's what's called a tabletop role-playing game. So it's like a video game without the screen. It's like a board game without the board. It is very much playing is the most open sandbox game you could ever play, because you can literally come up with there's no limitations, because there's no board, because there's no screen, because there's no programming. You can basically do whatever you want, and there are rules, but you can kind of make it up as you go, which it requires a dungeon master or a game master, which is my favorite role, to kind of like enforce the rules and play all the bad guys in the environment and everything that's happening. So it's very much a collaborative experience, where you sit down with a couple friends around a table, or I play virtually, so I do it right on Zoom, and you set out on an adventure and try to go for whatever goal you're working on.
That's cool. When you say it's done more for your creativity, help me understand that.
So as a dungeon master, I am responsible for creating the game world. So I am working on both my 4th and my 5th campaigns. I've done this a number of times, but I'm literally publishing a game. So I have to come up with, right, there's kind of like the core engine rules, but I have to come up with the rules. I have to come up with the characters. I have to come up with the progression systems. I have to come up with the story. I have to come up with a lot of different things that drives the engine. So when my players come to the game, they know who they're playing and what their mission is. And as they go and they set out and doing that, they have to interact with other non-playable characters, or they have to interact with the environments or creatures that are attacking them. So I have to run and manage all of those things, right? They just have to play one character. I literally have to play the entire world, all the bad guys, good guys that fill it.
And one of the things I've noticed, like I said, it's never been my thing, but the D&D folks, they find each other, they just kind of bond together. It seems like a very social engagement.
So game sessions usually run about 4 hours long. So you sit at a table with 4, 5, 6 people, and usually we're drinking and hanging out and having fun. Dick jokes often come up, and you're doing like random stupid things. We're literally crying from laughter in every single session just because of the ridiculousness that ensues. And there's always these elements of randomness because you're playing based on rolls. So you either roll well or you roll poorly, and that's kind of how the story goes. And I have to dictate it accordingly. So you're drinking, you're having fun, you're playing a game, you're doing wild, outlandish, outrageous things where in a world where anything is possible. So it kind of creates this bond with people. With I play with some of my closest friends, groomsmen, who were in my wedding party, um, all the way up to people who I meet online and have a passion. And there's something that clicks within those first 4 hours where you create a bond for life because you had so much fun and you got so creative and so vulnerable with them. Because it allows you to kind of like you get to vicariously play through your characters, right? So you might play out things that are kind of like in your wildest imaginations. So you're very revealing of who you are and the type of person you are in those settings. And I think that's really what does the job of really helping to kind of bring that human element in to be able to connect with other people on such a deep level in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. So what happens? I mean, because this has to happen, somebody who's never been a part of D&D, they come in. I mean, if I went into that world, I'd feel completely lost.
Yeah.
And I'd feel like an oaf. How's that work when somebody not savvy in the ways comes in?
So I always am looking, if someone hasn't played D&D, I'm looking for some other prior criteria. How much gaming have you done in general, whether it's board gaming or video gaming or really anything else? How much are you into like reading fantasy and movies and things like that? Because there's a lot of crossover that you can kind of draw from. So as long as kind of there's those minimum requirements, it kind of showcases this someone who's creative, someone who's kind of like open to trying this, and it's a little weird at first, like, right? Like I had to get drunk the first time I played because I was like, especially running the game, I was super nervous about it. So you come into the experience kind of not knowing what to do, but as long as you have other experiences that you can lean on and draw from like a fantasy perspective, it helps to kind of make the experience that much more immersive. I also start players off with an easier to pick up kind of game where it's just like, hey, here is your first couple rules. This kind of dictates what you can do on a turn, and anything else you want to do outside of that, just ask, and I'll tell you like what's possible and how you can actually do it. So I try to create an environment that's very easy for people to kind of come into and learn along the way. Because despite the fact that I've ran well over 100 sessions, on every time I play, I still have to look up some rule or another because there's so much that you can remember off the top of your head, but there's so much situational stuff that you need to go consult a rule book and see what's physically possible or not.
So are there certain things that let's say I came in and I tried to join one of your games and I came in and I did something, it would be just a little bit inappropriate and you might ask me to leave?
That probably wouldn't happen.
Really?
Yeah, we get very inappropriate. So out of the four it's my campaigns and my I have two friends who have also run other campaigns. In about 60% of them, at least someone's dick has been removed, like in combat. So
Oh, wow. Well, the reason this intrigues me is because I know we're here to talk about LinkedIn. When you come into LinkedIn, there's a lot of people that they come in with the wrong idea of what LinkedIn's about, and they start playing the game wrong.
yep. Even people who've been playing the game for years, right? I think they have more of a hard time because they've been so conditioned into playing the game a certain way that they're less open to changing their mind and trying something new that might actually be more beneficial for them and the relationships they're building.
Interesting. What do you see?
Sorry, say it again.
What's an example?
So if you come in, right, like it's really just kind of habit forming in general, like not just on LinkedIn, but everywhere across the board. But if I come in and I am very used to, this is the system I've created for myself, and I've been doing it for years and years and years, I'm gonna stick to that, right? So it might be like, this is the way that I create content, and I might be stuck in the way that I create content because I'm so used to doing it. But there might be one element in there that's holding me back because I'm not willing to go and change that or remove it. Right. I might be like personally stuck to it. Like, this is the way I always sign off. And maybe it pisses people off, or it's just kind of not like a best practice.
Yeah. Well, and I guess let's go down a level lower. So anybody that's been on LinkedIn, I'm sure you get the outreaches that I get,
Yeah.
where somebody's just like, "Hey, I mean, I'm going to do some course translation. Hi, Craig. You look like you might be a customer of mine. You
Yep.
want to connect?"
Yep. The classic pitch slap. Get them all the time.
Yeah, and but I mean, and this is where I see kind of the tie into the D&D is there are rules of the game. I mean, and D&D is extremely complex. That's the one thing I know about is it's extremely complex. And I would say relative to Facebook, I find LinkedIn like 10 times more complex than
Yeah.
Facebook because the starting assumptions are all over the map.
Yes. So in D&D, there is the core rule book that says like, here are the rules of play. And as the dungeon master, I can choose to use them or not. I can say like, hey, I'm going to change my rule. Like when we play my game, yes, D&D says this is the rule, but instead I'm going to make it my way. But then there's also a bunch of different rules that I have to make up that are situational or just specific to my campaign. So there are the written rules and the unwritten rules. And I think LinkedIn is the same way, right? Like LinkedIn has its terms, its policies. You have to kind of play by their rules when you come onto their platform. Don't use automation, don't participate in pods, all the kind of just like line items that they have in their legal documents that most people honestly don't know. Same thing, right? Like I don't know all the rules in the D&D rule book. I only go look them up when I absolutely need to.
What are pods?
Pods are a group of people who want to elevate each other, but they do so with the sole purpose of just like, you like my post and I'll like your post. You comment on my post and I'll comment on your post. So that way we get artificial engagement that's created out of it. So
Mhm.
like they're not going into like, hey, I like this person and I want to go engage with them and support them and network with them and collaborate with them. A lot like they can either be free or paid, but like people like group up together and they're just like, hey, let's just go like spam, like support each other. But a lot of times it's like it's artificial, it's bad comments, it's fake. So LinkedIn poo-poos it, and there's a lot of people, I'm kind of indifferent about it, but there's a lot of people who like make a pretty big kind of stink about it on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And what's automation?
Automation is, which is really funny too, because marketing in general uses automation in basically every other platform. Email automation is perfectly accepted and normal. But on LinkedIn, you can use automation tools to send DMs or like or uh, you can do it in a lot of different ways, right? Like you can send DMs, you can send connection requests, you can what's the thing where you're like basically say like this person's good at this particular skill, right? So you're kind of like automating the engagement and the interaction with other members, and LinkedIn does not approve of that. And if they find that you're using automation, they like that's in their policies, they'll actually like turn your account off or penalize you, something like that.
Mm. Yeah, and I run into a lot of people that say, "Oh, I've got a guy, he's got like some special software he plugs in and it does all these things. It's great. I don't know what he's doing, but hey, wow, it's really increased my followers." What would you say to them?
I used to do that. So I used to use Meat Alfred. I used to use Octopus. I used to use Duck Soup and a bunch of others. And it was the same thing, right? And it's here's my stance on it, right? Like automation as a tool is perfectly fine. LinkedIn disagrees with that. It's really about the way in which you use automation, which 90% of the people, and especially on LinkedIn, use it wrong, right? They go out and they spam people. They pull lists from LinkedIn Sales Navigator that are not really accurate or hyper custom specific to those people, and they just blast spam messages to everyone. And it's kind of the spray and pray approach where they send out 200 connection requests and get like a handful of responses from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's funny. I've had LinkedIn. I went through a period where they just kept shutting my account down, or they would lock me on my account.
Yeah.
And I was like, the only automation I'm using HubSpot, which is through your authorized API. And I'm using Shield Analytics, which you guys have listed on your website as a tool to use. I'm not using any other automation. And I was like, and you guys are threatening to shut down my account. And it's terrifying because today, I mean, when I graduated from college, you know, I had to make a resume. When I went, whenever I changed jobs, I had to make a resume. But that was a Word document that I'd save as a PDF and upload. Today, your resume is LinkedIn. If you lose your LinkedIn account, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, and it's your connection to your network, all those relationships, right? Like you better hope that you have their email or you're connected to them on another social platform, because otherwise you have to remember everyone who is in your network and go find them elsewhere. So yeah, it's it's the difference between kind of like right, owned and rented media, right? Like you're playing by their rules, you're on their platform, they can pull the rug out from you at any time and you're SOL, right? There's not much you can do about it. And they're pretty quick to like push people over and kind of like temporarily shut their account down. You have to go through quite a bit to like get permanently shut down, but they'll temporarily shut you down. You can like appeal it, but what's really ironic and funny about the entire process is they automate that themselves. So they're just looking for red flags that are happening, and it's basically like bots and things that are crawling LinkedIn to say like, all right, this person's opening up too many tabs too fast, right? So like you can actually go trigger those flags by not using automation. Like I can sit here and I can just open LinkedIn, copy, and then paste and paste and paste and paste and paste the same URL over and over again in a new tab, and I'll get flagged. So it's
Yeah.
like, they're just using automation to say like, all right, red flag, this person's potentially using automation. Let's temporarily shut them down. So
Yeah. So from my own social journey, the for years I wouldn't use Facebook for business. I just, and a lot of it was I just didn't understand it. And I was like, people don't care about me and my, loud ad that's saying buy my crap. They're going to Facebook, for other reasons. And I had somebody come to me and he said, Craig, the key is people go to Facebook to read stories about people. And once I understood that concept, I started writing ads that were stories about people. And the ads work insanely well. And for the haters out there, yes, you can draw B2B leads on Facebook. They're on there. People in business are on Facebook, just like people are on business, watch TV at night and you can run TV ads to them. But
any channel that has attention, you can get leads from.
yeah, exactly. But here's where I'm struggling. I'll just be honest, Dan, I do not have it figured out. I'm a little bit insecure about this. LinkedIn, I haven't cracked the code. I've put more hours than I can count into it. And I've studied your stuff. I still feel like I'm missing something. But when I try to finish that sentence, people go to Facebook to read stories about people. When I change it to people go to LinkedIn to, I come up with a few things. People go to LinkedIn to find their next job. People go to LinkedIn to find their next employee. People go to LinkedIn to find their next customer. And people go to LinkedIn to find their next network partner. And there may be more, and those may be right, those may be wrong. But the challenge I'm having is finding the context to create that introduction. On Facebook, I just need to tell a story about people and I'll get their attention. As long as they see themselves in the story, they'll come in. I haven't figured that out on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I don't know that it changes that much because storytelling is an extremely powerful tool. It's not the only one, right? There's certainly other kind of via content. There's a lot of other strategies that you can use to kind of get people's attention and get them interested. I don't know if people feel less comfortable, right? Because they're very much, people go to any other social platform for a multitude of reasons, right? Like it could be professional, it could be personal, it could be like, what am I cooking tonight? People come to LinkedIn with a specific business mindset, right? Like whether it is to apply for a job or find a customer, find a collaborator, partner, things like that. It's not kind of like open up to all areas of their life. It is somehow channeled through a business mindset. So there is kind of like that differentiator. So when people come in, they may be less comfortable to engage in content, which is why like you hear the term lurkers, people who will scroll feed. They never like or comment on your posts, but they've been eventually like, they'll reach out to you and say like, hey, I've been following you for years. And you're like, I've never even heard of you. So like,
You know what ticks me off is when I have some people that they'll tell me, they're like, Craig, you do the best posts. I love your posts. And I'm sitting there thinking, then why haven't you liked them? I mean, these aren't strangers. These are people
yep.
that know me.
Yeah.
I'm like, just click that like button. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're feeling bold, leave a comment.
Yeah. It's purely psychological, right? I think it's like that's like probably the one downside of LinkedIn being professionally focused is like, I think there's a lot of people out there who are less likely to, right? They'll gladly kind of go on Facebook or Instagram or any other social platform and comment on their friends' posts and stuff like that. I think they feel a lot more comfortable doing so. But people, right, kind of feel like, all right, I need to engage on this, and I need to, if I'm going to comment, if I'm going to talk about something, I need to kind of like bring my expertise, and then I feel like I'm putting myself out there. It just feels like a bigger hurdle for people, and especially when they're getting started, right? Once you immerse yourself and you do it and you get used to it and you condition yourself to it, it becomes a lot easier. But it's that initial hurdle of getting over. And that's why so many people just sit there and just scroll and consume content and don't actually, even right to your point, as simple as it is, just like one thumb, like hit that button, help me out, support me, we're friends. They're not even thinking about it that way. They're just like, this is awesome, but they keep scrolling because they're so conditioned not to like and comment.
Wow. Do
I
you have a
actually do
way?
that on Instagram, which is really like, I don't use it anymore, but when I did, I was very much a scroller and I never engaged on anything.
You have any tips for changing that behavior through what you post?
You have to, so regardless of the post itself, what I would say is you have to be proactive about reaching out to people, right? So like, just because people don't comment in public doesn't mean that they still might log in every single day, and they're still more than happy to have a conversation in the DMs, especially if you're going to be the one to initiate it. So I would say there's three primary systems that you need to be successful on LinkedIn if your goal is to build relationships with people in any capacity, right? Like I want investors, I want clients, I want to find employees, I want to find collaborators, partners, whatever. You need to have those three systems to be able to build those relationships. The first is content. So, right, like I need to regularly post content. I need to know what I'm going to talk about, how I'm going to structure my posts and everything. You need to have an engagement strategy. So, right, if people reply, right, people comment on my post, I want to reply to them. But also, who else in my network am I going to go engage with? How many comments am I going to post or, like publish each week on whose posts? And I think most people have those two systems. If they're active on LinkedIn, they have those systems figured out. The third system that most people don't have is a prospecting system. All right, well, how am I going to, out of all these people who are engaging in my content in any level, how am I going to start a conversation with them? How am I going to track and manage those conversations to ensure that they actually move through my pipeline and result in an opportunity?
And what would you recommend to them, those that are missing that third piece?
The most important part is it's a habit, it's a muscle. You need to have a system and you need to practice it. So even if it's like as simple as possible, right? Like the first thing I would do is one day a week, put a 30-minute block on your calendar that says prospect. And the first day, go figure out what you're going to do for the next week to week beyond that. And we can certainly kind of talk about what things to put in there, but right, like it's going through and saying, all right, well, who are leads for me? Who do I want to sit down and talk to? All right, well, I need to go message those people. I need to go send connection requests. Are people sending me connection requests? Are people viewing my profile? Are they commenting on my posts? It seems like the obvious thing to go accept those connection requests and reply to those comments. But the next step beyond that is to, well, okay, well, go send them a DM and keep the conversation going, because now you can get to know them better. You can start to build that relationship. a relationship turns into a conversation, you hop on a call with them, and then all of a sudden you can start to qualify and pull them into your funnel from there. So having the structure, knowing like I have time dedicated, my goal on this in this 30-minute block is to message 5 new people, start new conversations. And that takes me about half that time. The rest of the time I'm going to go in and I'm going to respond to my DMs, people who have messaged me back. And then if I still have time or if I want to keep going, I'm going to say, all right, well, I was tracking everyone that I talked to. So who didn't respond to me? Do I need to follow up with any of those people? So having a system in place to make sure that you are starting new conversations and following up on those conversations to actually, right, like, are they progressing, are they moving forward, did I drop the ball, did I forget to send my booking link, or did they not respond even though they said like, yes, I'd love to talk to you. I want to make sure I just send a friendly reminder to make sure that, that actually happens.
And these outreaches, again, we all get these endless emails or these DMs of, hey, you look like my ideal client. Want
Yeah.
to connect?
Definitely
So
don't send that.
yeah, yeah, or some version of that. Some
Yeah.
people think, oh, I'm really smooth. They'll never know what I'm saying. I'm like, no, they know what you're saying. So how do you reach out to an audience that's already skeptical of people reaching out to them to actually get them to engage?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. The first thing I'm looking for is I'm looking for like a warm hand raise, right? So the reason I consider something cold is if I'm the person to initiate, right? Like if I find someone on a list, this is someone I want to reach out to, and they've never heard of me or they haven't seen my content or anything like that, that's purely cold. But if someone is already commenting on my post, if someone's already sending me a connection request, if already someone is viewing my profile, right, they're at least within the past 24, 36 hours, like familiar with me or my content. So that is an opportunity for me to just start the right, like progress the conversation, even though it might just been like as simple as like, I went to go check out Dan's profile, right? If you saw a message from me 24 hours later versus right, like you'd be more likely to respond to that message than you would to someone whose profile you didn't view and they just reached out to you purely cold. So that's the first thing, right? Like I'm looking for warm leads. I'm looking for people who have actually seen me or my content within the past like couple days, because that gives me a leg up because they're already familiar with who I am. It's not like I'm some complete stranger reaching out to them.
Yeah.
The second thing is how you bridge that conversation. So you need to have some sort of icebreaker or some sort of common thread that ties you together, some sort of common interest. So if you look at my profile, there's a reason why I put Dungeon Master and Dad in my tagline. If you look at my profile summary and scroll down to the bottom, there's like a bunch of common interest. Like, here are the things that I'm passionate about. Here's the things that I care about. So this is me proactively saying like, here's the things that I like, right? Like I obviously talk about LinkedIn and social selling. I talk about community and relationship building through my content, but I also share a lot of other things that are non-business related because I want people to, I just need one thing that we can connect on, right? Like the amount of people who reach out to me and say like, I love D&D or I love video games or I love Dune or I love this, starts a conversation. And it starts a conversation in a way that is very conversational, right? Like it's not like, hey, here's my wares, buy my shit. It's like, hey, you're a human. I see you like this. I like that too. And that is the easiest way to start a conversation with anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a type of outreach that I've been doing recently that, lines up. I'm looking, I'm doing some explorations in the medical space. Um, one, because I want to help businesses that are bringing needed change to healthcare. And I have a compelling reason for that. I have a big scar across my upper lip that was decorated by the hospital when they had given me up for dead. And so I have a passion behind that. And so it's kind of that common bond where I'm able to create these connections, but it's rooted in a genuine desire to help people that are fixing the broken healthcare. Do you know Justin Leader?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I met him through Matt, who's a mutual contact of ours. And Justin's just one of these people. And it's really neat when you meet these people. they're insanely busy because they have a sense of urgency that's over the top of this is broken, we've got to fix it.
Yep.
And so I'm reaching out and connecting with them because I want more of these type of people in my life.
Yeah.
But it's around this common bond of I almost died. I mean, spent, I didn't spend, but I racked up a couple $1 million in hotel and hospital bills and nearly died. And from the inside, I got to see the brokenness of the system. And for no other reason, I want to cheer for the folks that are doing things to change the brokenness.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's that fiery passion inside that makes it easy to connect with other people, especially when they share it too, or they're seeing it day in and day out, right? Like if they're working in the system, it's that is something that they can't, right? Like it's very easy for someone to be like, another cold pitch in my DMs, right? Like you don't even finish reading it, you move on. It's easy for you to lay to the side. But if there's something that lights you up, that kind of fires you up, that gets you excited or passionate, when someone, right, like drops that one or two words, you can't help but respond, right? Like, and even if you don't have time in the moment, it sits in the back of your head and you want to get back to them. So it's about finding that common interest, that common thread that you can pull on, because a conversation is not a conversation until the other person responds. So your first initial goal is always to get the person to respond, and you do that by finding some sort of common interest. And the more that they're passionate about it, the more likely they are to respond.
Okay. So what do you think about outsourcing that? Because I have people that approach me and say, "Hey, Craig, we'll run your LinkedIn strategy. I just need to interview you, one day, an hour a week or a couple hours a month, and you just sit back, you wait for the business to show up. I'm going to do all of your LinkedIn posts. I'll drive your engagement." What do you think about that?
So if it's content, I think it works fine. As long as you are the source of the content, that's all that really matters, right? So like I can, after this recording, I can take this content, I can go give it to my VA and he can clip it up and take video content, and he can right, like here's the clip. He can even like listen to the clip, listen to the rest of the episode, and actually probably draft some good copy that goes along with it and post it on my behalf. The problem where outsourcing becomes a problem is really around the conversational piece, because you can't fake that. You can't fake that human connection, right? And I've actually tried to do this back in like the early days of my business. I actually did do this for other people, and I figured out like a good system, like here's certain questions that you can ask and things like that, that I like distilled from having that conversation with that person. Okay, tell me more about your business model. Like through the process of discovery, I could understand what questions do I need to ask to move someone from stranger to, hey, I'd like to meet you and get to like book a call with you. The thing is, like, I was actually working with a doctor at the time who was building a like software solution, and only so much of that conversation could land because I couldn't speak to his personal experiences of going through med school, and right, his experience of working late nights, and some of like the like the patients that he had along the way, right? Like there's a lot of those intangible things that you're pulling from your subconscious memory that you might not even remembered for years, but someone brought something up and it's just like, boom, that's the top of my head. That's how I relate to this person. So content, as long as you are the source, I think can be outsourced and repurposed to help you kind of scale your efforts as a creator. But conversationally, it becomes extremely difficult. I would have like a VA start conversations for me, but then I like, right, like I can have like a boiler, right? Like I even give templates in my free guide, right? Like go start conversations with people here and copy and paste this in. Go copy this, paste this into this place. That starts the conversation, but every conversation is like a snowflake. You never really know where it's going to go next. So you kind of need to lean into your own personal experiences to be able to carry that forward,
Yeah.
in my personal opinion.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that you said earlier that I've seen that there are a lot of people watching what you're doing on LinkedIn that never respond. And the one that surprised me the most is a former colleague. We worked together 25 years ago. And then when I changed jobs, she was a customer. But last time we talked was over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And last year I published two books. One of them about, my wife and I co-wrote about my journey with COVID through the hospital. And she comments on the post saying, Craig, I just bought your book. She lives in Sweden.
Yeah.
So I got an international sale.
Nice.
And that's the first time I'd heard from her in over 20 years.
Yep.
And I realized, oh, there's people seeing this content that I have no idea. And made a book sale, made a whopping 67 cents off that. But yeah, and I think that's important to remember is there are people that are watching it and not engaging.
Yes, very much so. A lot of them, right? Like you'll see you'll see the usual suspects, your friends, your collaborators, partners who will show up for you often, and they're great. But there's also a lot of people who are seeing you consistently, regularly, and who are not engaged. And that's why, from an outreach perspective, profile views are really good, because rather than wait those 20 years for that person to say like, hey, I've been following your post and I just bought your book, they're not going to like your post. They're not going to comment on their post, but occasionally they will come check out your profile, because that's a very low barrier thing for them to do. But the trick is you can see that they're doing that, and you can use that as like the impetus to start the conversation and be like, hey, holy shit, like your name just popped up. I haven't talked to you in years. Like, what's going on? How you been? Right. And now you're into the conversation from there.
Yeah. You know, something else I'm saying, and we'll probably have to wrap up here in a second, but something else I've seen, I think this is important to touch on. I've seen some comments on my post, and it's not like one or two sentences, it's an entire paragraph.
Yeah.
And I read through the entire paragraph, and it's accurate, it's contextual, but it's missing a certain warmth. And as I look at it, I was like, I think that was written by an AI.
Likely. Yeah. There's a
And it hits me. I was
lot
like,
of content being written by AI right now.
I'm like, I think people are using AI to like comment on posts to kind of expand their efforts. And the feelings, I'm interested in your take on this. The feelings I feel when I see that, I'm like, okay, thank you for commenting on my post, because hopefully that helps drive engagement. I appreciate that sincerely. Thank you. But I don't feel like you wrote it. And I don't feel more connected to you as a result of that comment.
Yep. And that's the important part, is the feeling, right? Like that is what social selling is all about. It's about the relationship. It's about the rapport. It's about the mutual connection that you have, and that feeling of like disconnectedness because they're using tools, or same thing going back to like using a VA or someone else who's going to outsource that conversation. Like that's the part you can't fake. You can scale content, but you can't scale conversations. You can't scale relationships, because the moment that you do, they feel disingenuous.
I can't think of a better way to end. That is such a powerful point. It's about creating connection. Dan, you have some tools for people.
Yeah.
What are the tools and how do they get them?
Yeah, you bet. Come to my LinkedIn profile. That is the best place to find me. Just, I think it's Dan-Mott, or, you can find me. I have a free guide on my LinkedIn profile where it basically says, here are the 3 best places to find leads. We've already talked about them on today's call. It is your people who are commenting on your post, people who are sending you connection requests, and people who are viewing your profile. I walk you through kind of step-by-step process on how to actually engage them. And I even provide templates on here's what to say just to get the conversation started. So that's a good way to just build that kind of prospecting muscle, right? Schedule time on your calendar, go download the guide, and just follow it through step by step to start more conversations with people who would be potential clients or whatever you're looking for. I also do teach all of my social selling frameworks through a course, the LinkedIn Social Selling Playbook. So if you really want to dive deep into building out an entire prospecting system and sales process for your business that uses LinkedIn as the engine for that, you can find all that stuff right in there.
Well, that's awesome, Dan. And I do hope people will reach out to you. I know the content that I've gotten from you has been powerful to me. You're clearly one of the masters on LinkedIn. And I know that because of the number of people that told me how you've changed their business through your coaching. So thanks for sharing that here on Leaders and Legacies.
Yeah, you bet, my pleasure. And quick before we go, I think it's funny too, because right, like I am not what you would consider a like, and for those who are listening, I'm air quoting this, traditional influencer, right? The people who have hundreds of thousands of followers and a bazillion comments on every single post. I'm here to say you don't need that, right? Those people have a lot of engagement, but they're not always the best at converting it into actual paying clients and business opportunities. It really only takes a handful of comments, I'd say like 10 comments or more on a post, to start the conversations that you need to generate opportunity for yourself and your network. So it doesn't take much. Just go out there and do the work, build relationships, and just be a genuine human, and you'll have success too.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greg.